Hello, everyone. Welcome to Cracking Addiction. My name's Dr. Fergal Armstrong, and today we have Mr. Andy Smith, who is a practitioner and trainer in Appreciative Inquiry. So let's get into it. Andy, welcome. Tell me, what is Appreciative Inquiry? And then we need to talk about your journey to this point, because it's an interesting one. So what's Appreciative Inquiry, first of all?
Okay. Appreciative inquiry is a method of solving problems originating in organizational development, but it scales down nicely to teams and even individuals. It's a method of improving performance, solving problems that, unlike traditional problem solving, it's not looking for what's wrong, what's caused this problem, and so on. Instead, it looks at what's already working in the situation, finding out the factors that promote good performance that are already there. And the idea is, if we do more of what's working, if we put those factors in place more widely, then performance is going to improve. So rather
Right.
than focusing in on the problem, we're looking pretty much anywhere but the problem, because that's where we're going to find solutions.
Right. So it's vastly different from consulting in the traditional sense of the word, and
Yep.
also from change management, as it were.
Yeah, I mean, it can be used as part of change management for sure. But
Right. Okay.
yeah, unlike the traditional change management consultant, I am not diagnosing the problem. I am not prescribing a solution. Instead,
Mm.
I am facilitating the people involved in finding their own solutions, in looking in directions they weren't looking before, and finding their own solutions that work for them, because they are the experts on their own lives and their own working practices.
Right. Right. So, how does one become a provider and trainer of appreciative inquiry? What was your CV that led you to this point?
My CV is checkered, shall we say, in terms of qualifications. So, having done originally a politics degree, I went into IT and did that for 12 years. Didn't particularly like it, was just doing it for the money. But, it was fine. Then faced a very stressful period at work with a project that went wrong, and decided I couldn't stay in that industry anymore. I dropped out, did a complete 180, and became a hypnotherapist. I did the training, I set up as a hypnotherapist, and I discovered actually I was pretty good at working with clients, and the experience of being good at my job was a new one for me. I think previously I was like the square peg in the round hole.
Mm.
Found something that suited me.
I was going to say, to have someone who likes people and likes helping people and communicating with people transition from IT, that's not necessarily the most obvious origin, is it?
No, although in IT there is a lot of, or there can be, depending on what side of it you are, there can be a lot of interaction with the users and getting their requirements for systems and so on. And I enjoyed that side of it for sure. But
Right.
I'm in no sense a kind of tech wizard or techno nerd or anything like that. I was working with clients, set up as a practitioner, and I was looking constantly for ways of improving my skills and getting better techniques, because what I've been trained in, as I read up more about hypnotherapy, was pretty old fashioned. It's kind of direct suggestion, authoritarian hypnosis. And
Mm.
I discovered neuro-linguistic programming. I found some guys who trained in that who impressed me personally. I thought, yeah, I must train in this. I trained in it, practitioner, master practitioner, trained as a trainer of other people. And then I was doing that for about 10 years and getting
Mm.
all sorts of interesting people, from real kind of like new agey space cadet type of people to hard-nosed business consultants and everything in between on my courses.
Mm.
So I started applying the NLP techniques to helping executives or helping people generally to increase their emotional intelligence, increase their self-awareness, increase their awareness of other people, and the impact they can have as leaders. So appreciative inquiry is a totally, totally different approach. It relates to the emotional intelligence stuff because rather than being individually based, like most forms of coaching, counseling, therapy, it's looking at what happens between people. It came out of organizational development. So it's a collective focus rather than an individual focus. It's looking at the ways that people relate to each other in work and the environment that they create for each other. Which, of course, if there's a problem in a work environment, you might say, if you're in the middle of it, you might think, right, okay, there's a problem. It's all outside of me. But of course, everyone involved in that, including that person, is part of the problem. It's like being stuck in a traffic jam and complaining about the traffic. You know, you're not in a traffic jam. You are the traffic yourself as well.
So let's look at some case studies, right? Because my background is the healthcare industry. So can you talk to us about a specific example of how you have used appreciative inquiry to solve a problem in a healthcare setting?
Yeah, let's take an example. It's a slightly unusual healthcare setting because it was actually a women's prison in the UK.
It's
But
healthcare is healthcare.
yeah, I was brought in by the chief nursing officer
Yeah.
at this prison. And what they wanted to do was reform or streamline the drug dispensing regime. So in women's prisons, as I understand it, most of the prisoners are there. Either they've got a drug addiction problem, which has led them to, commit whatever crimes, or they are heavily medicated on prescription medication. So there's a lot of drugs to be dispensed every day to help them get off the addiction, to keep them stable, and so on. And as I understand it, Fogel, you've worked in prisons, right? As
Yes,
chief
I have
medical officer.
experience working in healthcare settings in prisons, so I'm really fascinated to hear this example.
So you will know that you can't just give everyone their prescription because some of them won't take it, some of them will store it and sell it to other prisoners, and so on. So it's quite a long, involved process, as I understand it, dealing out these medications every day. It seemed like the prison officers were almost resenting the drug dispensing regime because it was bending the routine of the prison day and the security aspects slightly out of shape. They were having to sort of work around it. And the nursing staff were kind of similarly almost resenting the prison routine because they had to crowbar their drug dispensing into it. So it was really important to get these two groups of people together in order to devise something that could work better. And it was never going to work if you only involved the medical staff. Because I, from a theoretical point of view, I would have liked to have involved some prisoners as well to get their viewpoint. But for security reasons, that just wasn't practical, I was told. And I can understand that. So as a warm-up question, I got prison officer to pair up with nursing staff. So you end up with like 15 pairs of people. And I asked them to ask each other, to interview each other based on this question: what's been your best experience of working here? And as they started asking each other this question, you could feel the atmosphere in the room change as they told each other their stories. And some of it was quite moving. So, this is the story of how I helped this woman get off heroin, or this is the story of how I helped this lady, once she was released, to get her kids back from social services. And you could see quite the sort of hardened prison officers kind of opening up. And from that point on, it wasn't two sets of people. It was more like one group of people, one team facing this common problem of how do we improve the drug dispensing regime.
So, to what extent do the techniques of neurolinguistic programming feed into an exercise like this?
There is some relation, but it's more about the way that I would frame the exercises that I'm asking them to do. See, the difference, a crucial difference between NLP and appreciative inquiry, facilitating an appreciative inquiry event, is that with NLP, I would be the expert and I would be probably listening to them describe their problems and think, okay, let's elicit the structure of where this is going wrong. What happens then? What happens then? What happens then? How are you thinking about it? Are you seeing a picture? Are you hearing something? And so on. Appreciative inquiry, I am just saying, ask each other that question. So they are the experts on their own lives. I'm not the only thing I'm an expert on is appreciative inquiry. So I guess I would say success as an appreciative inquiry facilitator would not depend really on having a load of like fancy techniques up your sleeve.
So one more case study question. I mean, one of the things that I also am interested in is lifestyle medicine, resilience, and also the concept of burnout. And, I don't know any health service in the world that doesn't say, oh, since COVID, we've had a problem with burnout. So have you in your appreciative inquiry work, have you had to come across burnout, and how have you managed it?
Let me talk very quickly about the structure of how we normally conduct an appreciative inquiry process. There are, if you want to boil it down to two aspects, it's these. First of all, whatever problem we're trying to solve, rather than investigating the problem, we flip that so that we're inquiring into whatever the opposite of the problem is. Okay. The reason for that, the reason why that's worth doing and why it works is, as I understand it from the work of Dr. Richard Boyatzis, who I think is at Case Western Reserve University, he co-authored an interesting paper called The Neuroscience of Coaching, and later expanded that up into a kind of popular psychology stroke management book called Helping People Change. There are two networks in the brain. One is the task positive network, which is activated when we're looking at problems, threats, trying to hit targets. And the other one is the default mode network, which is kind of more relaxed one that comes into play when the other network isn't activated. And that's more kind of dreamy. It sees things in context of past, present, future. It's less detailed. It's more focused on relationships than tasks. So we've got task positive, all about task achievement, kind of blinkered, really. Let's achieve this goal. Let's deal with this threat. And the default mode network, which is more relaxed, more open, more focused on relationship than task. Now, in order to solve problems, you need both of those networks, but unfortunately, they can't both be activated at the same time, because when one's activated, it suppresses the other and vice versa. So most of the time in a work environment, people are more in that task positive mode. They've got that to-do list, they've got targets to hit, or in the case of these reforms hitting these allied health practitioners, they've got threats, as they perceive it, to deal with. So the downside of being in that task positive mode is you're focused on the task. You tend to see your colleagues as either resources to help you achieve that task or obstacles that are in the way of helping you achieve that task. And anyone who's worked in any sort of office or work environment will know what I'm talking about. Some people are just like pains and get in the way of you doing your job, and other ones perhaps are helpful. But if you're in a situation that needs new thinking because your previous ways of solving problems haven't worked, there is no best practice for this. We're in a complex situation. We're in that volatile, uncertain, complex, and whatever the other one is, VUCA world. As Einstein is supposed to have said, you can't solve a problem with the level of thinking that led to the problem in the first place. So we need new ideas. We need fresh ways of looking at things, right? So when you don't know what the problem is, really, you don't know what the causes are, you can't break it down into component parts. There isn't best practice existing already. You need different ways of thinking. You need fresh ways of thinking. You need to be able to bond with your team. You need to be able to think creatively yourself. And crucially, you need to be open to ideas from other people so that
So it's
get
more
around
interpersonal skills, isn't it?
It's interpersonal skills, but these are skills that anyone has. It just depends what mode of thinking they're in. So appreciative inquiry is a really good way of getting people into that default mode or empathic mode where they can be open to new ideas, where they can feel more creative and better able to come up with good ideas themselves. And the way that we do this is twofold. First of all, flipping the problem. So we're thinking about what we want instead of what we don't want, where we want to get to rather than where we want to get away from. Instantly, people will feel better about that. Their emotional state will improve a little bit. They'll because they're thinking of pleasant things rather than unpleasant things. So that tends to open up that default mode network. The other aspect of appreciative inquiry is having what they call generative conversations, where everyone involved in the system that kind of creates the problem in the first place is having conversations about how things can improve. And there is a structure for that. But yeah, you wanted to say something or ask something there.
No, it just sounds as if it's. I'm seeing a lot of similarities between what you said about those schemas and what I understand about schema therapy and what I understand about the oppositional relationship between, say, the parasympathetic nervous system and the sympathetic nervous system. And really, you can only hold one idea at one time and one schema at one time. So I'm seeing it through that lens. So how do people get in touch with you if they want to engage in appreciative inquiry?
Okay, well, they can find me through my website, which is coachingleaders.co.uk. Of course, I am based in Europe, so they might, if they're in Australia, for example, they might want to find a practitioner who's a little bit closer to them. They could email me via the website, and I could probably suggest somebody, maybe one of my own graduates, or maybe somebody else who's got a good reputation in that field down there.
Well, Andy, I'm afraid we've run out of time, but I really want to thank you for your taking your time to share with us your expertise in this field. I'd never heard of it before. I really appreciate your explanations, and I look forward to maybe chatting with you again in the near future to kind of explore some of the other issues that might come up. So thank you very much.
Well, thank
Andy
you, Fogel.
Appreciative Inquiry expert, trainer, and tutor. That's all for today, folks. My name is Dr. Fergal Armstrong, and this has been Cracking Addiction.